Hey, what is up, tech enthusiasts? BoHD here, and today I wanted to review the Google Nexus 5 for you guys, now that it has been about a year since its release. As you guys know, this is 2014, and Google has just released, or at least they just announced, the all-new Nexus 6, the monstrous Android phone running pure Android software. But what you might not know is that they are actually selling the Nexus 5 next to the Nexus 6 to sort of appeal to all of you guys who might like smaller displayed phones. So without further ado, let's go ahead and review this device and see how it stands 1 year later. Alright, so I'm just gonna say it, I love the Nexus 5. I love all Nexus devices for one main reason, and that's just because of the software. While I do like me an HTC or Samsung phone from time to time, I think pure stock Android from Google is the most fluid Android OS one could have. And as you can see, the OS might look a little bit different since I did flash the Nexus 5 with the latest version of Android 5.0. That way, it's on the cutting edge in terms of software since this is 1 year later and Android 5.0 Lollipop is now a thing. So with Android Lollipop, there is a ton of improvements. I could spend 5 minutes detailing all of them, but Marquez, aka MKBHD, already covered that, so if you want to watch that video, I'll provide the link in the description bar. But basically, animations are the most radical design change found on Android 5.0. Everything, and I mean everything, has a new animation and look to it, whether it's the app drawer that morphs into a larger white card from the bottom of the screen, to Google Now that does a similar action. Just as you can see as I navigate throughout this device, visual, motion, and interactive design are all the central themes of this operating system, and it just really looks good. It's definitely more visually appealing than the last Android operating system, that is for sure. And for being a 1 year old device, it's still a very competitive device in terms of performance. It's equipped with a Snapdragon 800 quad-core processor, clocked at 2.26 GHz with 2 GB of RAM, and as you can see, just opening and closing applications is a breeze. This phone doesn't really struggle to run the new Android L operating system at all. I'd say, in terms of fluidity, it's smoother than a lot of new flagship devices on the market. Really, the one thing holding it back is the Adreno 330 GPU. It's probably the most dated component, and with all these visual upgrades, it's really going to be hit the hardest. You'll notice this especially when you play games. It's just not going to offer the smoothest and most high-def experience like you'd see on the new Nexus 6 with that Adreno 420 GPU, which kicks ass in terms of performance. I mean, the processor on the Nexus 5 is still a beast. Like I said, with all those visual improvements, you will notice some stuttering and minor lag when under some graphic-intensive stress. It's not going to be much, but it's definitely more noticeable. But taking a step back, the Nexus 5 from a hardware standpoint is really not bad. If you compare it with phones today, competition is tight and OEMs are making even more well-built devices. You don't see half as many slimy plastic phones as you do today. And so the Nexus 5 is solid, the soft touch plastic matted back cover is alright, it offers a good amount of grip, but it's still plastic and just doesn't compete with a metal device, that's for sure. And also, side note, it's not as durable as a metal phone. As you can see, this phone has some use to it. It's a Nexus device, so you can bet I use it a lot. And yeah, it holds its own pretty well, but it's still not all that strong. If we take a look around the device, we'll see that the Nexus 5 has the volume up and down controls located on the left hand side, the power sleep on off button and SIM card slot on the right hand side, the 3.5mm headphone jack up top, and the micro USB charging port and mono speakers on the bottom that look like stereo speakers, but they're not. On the front is the 1.3 megapixel front facing camera and ambient light sensors, and really not much else. It's super clean, which is why I just love Nexus devices. You won't find any sort of carrier branding on the device, and that alone is worth something. But on the back is the subtle Nexus and LG brandings. It's very subtle compared to most devices. And then there is the camera. The camera on the Nexus 5 is an 8 megapixel camera sensor, and it's really the main area of disappointment with the Nexus 5. Granted, it's not absolutely terrible, but it's just not all that good. Images don't have a whole lot of detail, and the exposure can be hit or miss. But, and this is a big but, with the new Android 5.0 update, you can now capture images in RAW formats, which aren't compressed and converted into low-sized image formats like JPEG. This means that no matter what smartphone you have, the camera will be improved just by updating it to the newest Android operating system. That also means that the Nexus 5 camera will take even better shots, although relatively, it still doesn't take very good photos compared to the others. And so as a whole, the Nexus 5 is a killer device, and it just really goes to show you how important software is on a device. The Nexus lineup is all about showing off the latest and greatest Android Google software, and 1 year later, the Nexus 5 still manages to run the latest version of Android very well. The only thing I didn't really talk about or highlight was battery life, and that's just because this is a 1-year-old device, and as you guys know, battery life drastically degrades over time. If you buy the Nexus 5 brand new from the Google Play Store, then I'd say battery life will last you easily 1 to 2 days with heavy use. However, if you play games on a single charge each day, then you'll probably have trouble getting through a complete day on a single charge. Otherwise, you should be just fine. The battery life really is just average, and it's really not that bad. But 1 year later, I do find it harder and harder for the battery to last me throughout the day. I use my phone a lot, and the 2300 milliamp battery is just so-so. It packs a decent charge when it's new, but 1 year later and it starts to have problems. And the worst part is that it's not removable, so you can't replace the battery like you can on most Samsung phones. But besides that, the only real fault with this phone is the camera, and even then it's going to be improved with the new Android L software. I mean, the hardware is still solid and the performance is very impressive still. You can still fly through this phone opening and closing applications, and it's really not going to show much strain at all. That is, unless you play heavily graphic intensive games. But arguably, one of the best aspects of the phone is the $350 price tag, which is how much the phone costs right now. If you're not in a rush, however, you could wait for the possible price cut, which has been rumored to take place soon. So you could get this awesome device for even cheaper. And if you're still not convinced with the Nexus 5, maybe you don't like the camera or the hardware for whatever reason, then the Nexus 6 might be an option for you. It'll be on all carriers, and it really looks to shine in all areas the Nexus 5 lacked in. But right now, guys, I'm making this video to tell you that the Nexus 5 is here now, and it still packs a punch for half the cost of the upcoming Nexus 6. And so with that said, that is my review of the Nexus 5 1 year later. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one. See ya.